And welcome to the Three Rivers Podcast for Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. I am your host, Ed Troop. Hope everybody is doing great out there on our Oneburg Facebook channel, our Oneburg YouTube page, or maybe you're listening live on Spotify. And we certainly welcome everyone back. We've been off for about a month. It's been since the second week of June. Some vacation, some time off, some much-deserved time off from a long spring into early summer for Brian and myself. Brian not on with us here tonight, but hopefully will be back with us next week. But as we kind of navigate through things here this evening, we're going to have lots to talk about. And joining us to talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates, Major League Baseball, and all of his adventures across all 30 MLB stadiums is my good friend, Bill Powerhouse Hughes. Bill, good evening to you. Welcome into the podcast.
Hey, Ed, good to talk to you, my friend. Thanks for having me on again.
Bill, of course, we're going to get into it a little bit later here in the podcast, but you're actually in the process of writing a book and a pretty interesting subject of that. You've been to all 30 Major League Baseball stadiums and some additional stadiums where they've played some Major League Baseball games. That is quite the experience, and we're excited to talk to you a little bit later on about that.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Ed.
We're going to start first with the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are battling tonight in Milwaukee. The Buccos, the first half of the season, 44-47 so far, 8.5 games out of first place. Big win last night at Milwaukee, a place where the Pirates never play well at the Brewers, but they won 12-2 last night. The Brewers are in first place in the NL Central. They're 53-39. Perez gets to start tonight for the Pirates, and then they wrap up a 3-game set in Milwaukee tomorrow afternoon when Paul Skeens takes the mound. We'll talk about Skeens here just in a little bit. But, Bill, the Pirates are only 3 games under 500. We talked here in the podcast back at the start of April, at the start of the season. What does a successful season look like for the Pittsburgh Pirates? And a lot of us said if they can play around 500 baseball and keep us interested once Steeler camp starts, which, as you can see, is just 2 weeks away, 14 days, our countdown on your screen until Steelers camp. If they can keep us interested through July and August, then they've succeeded.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll see how they do. I remember, was that last week when Bob Nutting, the owner, came on, did an interview with whomever it may have been, and said that, they can go ahead and spend the money now. Don't have to wait till the deadline, try to make this thing work. Seen a report or two over the last few days refuting that, saying that some people in the Pirates organization weren't too happy. I believe the word I saw was furious. So who knows? I mean, it's there for the taking. I mean, they can get into the wild card. There's no question about it. It's just a matter of, the bats are coming alive a little bit, but they need a little bit more punch. They have the pitching there once they get these injured, these guys off the IL. But, they could find themselves in the wild card. They really could.
Yeah, absolutely. They're right now, as they sit, they're 3 games out of the final wild card position. Atlanta, St. Louis, and San Diego, the Padres, holding down those first 3 spots as we record this podcast here tonight, going into the final, 4 or 5 days before the All-Star break. So, yeah, they're within striking distance. The NL Centrals are a very wide open division this year. We talked about it during the preseason as far as training camp goes and everything leading up, spring training. That's the word I'm looking for before the Major League Baseball season started. See, I already got my eyes and ears and brain, Bill, set on football. That's why I'm talking camps already. But, during spring training, we talked about the NL Central being pretty wide open and down this year. And that's pretty much how it's played out so far. Milwaukee being the best so far, 53-39, as we talked about just a little bit ago. Then you have St. Louis, 4 games back. The Pirates, 8.5, Cincinnati 9, and the games out. So, the Pirates, the Reds, and the Cubs are all within a game of each other for that 3rd, 4th, and last place spot in the NL Central. It's pretty tight so far.
It is. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, looking at those standings, I mean, they're a good week from leapfrogging St. Louis and potentially, having Milwaukee look over their shoulder. But Pirates are also a bad week from being in the cellar. I mean, that's the way it works. I mean, every game is important, and hopefully the pitching can continue and they take things on the right trajectory and keep moving up.
You mentioned pitching and how strong that pitching's been for the Pirates so far this season. They've come on, of course, with Jared Jones, the other rookie, injured right now, as you said a little bit ago, on the IL, but hopefully he'll be coming off a little bit later on in the second half of the season. I think they're projecting maybe a month and a half yet for Jared Jones. Mitch Keller's been stellar so far this season. Keller, 10-5, 3.40 ERA, 102 strikeouts so far on the season. Slow start for Keller to start the season, Bill, but he's really come on as of late. Not on the All-Star team, surprisingly, but a guy that is, and he's been the main show so far this year here in Pittsburgh as well as across Major League Baseball, has been first-round draft pick Paul Skeens. In 10 starts, 5 wins, no losses, a 2.12 ERA, 78 strikeouts, and, he's only had 12 walks so far this season. Skeen's been very impressive at the pitcher position.
Absolutely. And a couple of those walks, I believe, were in that first start at PNC. And I was down there for that. And there was such a buzz. I mean, it's unfortunate that, the last 7-8 seasons, there aren't many times where there's a buzz in that place. And Skeens' debut was one. And the hype around Skeens versus Shohei Ohtani a few weeks later, the buzz was there. I mean, this is a baseball town. What I mean by that is, yes, it's a Steelers town. I get that. But people here love baseball. And if they have a reason to go, they're going to go. And Skeens has provided them that reason to go thus far. And Keller, like you said, he didn't make the All-Star team. I was disappointed today to see that they pitcher, isn't going to be pitching. They went with I forget who they went with. But they overlooked Keller. And to a point, can you really go with 3 All-Stars from a team that is, that far under 500 right now? So I kind of understand that. But if you'd have told me Keller was going to make it and not Skeens, I wouldn't have had a problem with that, because Keller has really stepped it up and he's pitching like, everybody's expecting him to pitch. Skeens, he's a stud. He's a workhorse. And I had a feeling, and I shared this with a few friends. You and I didn't communicate and talk about this, but I had shared with them that I had a feeling that Skeens was going to make the All-Star game as long as he kept consistent, and he's been consistent and then some. And I thoroughly look for Major League Baseball to take advantage of the fact that Skeens' girlfriend, Libby Dunn, the social media darling, if you will. I wouldn't be surprised to see her holding a microphone doing some work for whether it's MLB or ESPN. She's going to be there. Take advantage of it. Major League Baseball needs. They're trying to draw the younger fans in. And, obviously the story here is Skeens, but take advantage of the fact that, his girlfriend will be there.
Yeah, she's certainly been the buzz of Major League Baseball, the Taylor Swift of Major League Baseball, if you will. You got the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce NFL version going on at PNC Park with the two of them. But Paul Skeens has been lights out. You mentioned it, Bill. When this guy pitches, it's a sellout crowd. Even on the road, you're seeing a huge following for Paul Skeens so far this year. And, my question to you is, I joked a few weeks ago. I said, will he lose a game at all this year? And you start thinking about, of course, at the Major League Baseball level, that's a yes. He's at some point he's going to lose a game, right? I'm not too sure, Bill. I think he could have more, no decisions in front of him the second half of the season. But, this guy could end up starting 20, 25 games and go 15-0 with 10 no decisions. I'm really starting to think that Paul Skeens may not lose a game this year.
That would be great. That'd be video game-like, if you will. I'm not going to jinx him and go that far. I don't want to, throw that on him. But he's been lights out. I mean, he's the front runner for Rookie of the Year, and if he keeps it going, I'm not saying he's going to win Cy Young, but how far could he get up the order, the voting for the Cy Young Award? I mean, he's been outstanding. And if he was getting any kind of run support in some of these no decisions, what would his record be right now? 8-0.
Right, absolutely. And that's where the no decisions come into play. Every start's a strong start. Again, that ERA is only 2.12 for Skeens. It's when he doesn't get the run support. And so far this season, the Pirates have done the following. They have a 13-run deficit. They've scored 382 total runs so far this season. They've given up 395 so far this year. So that's about even. 22-24 at home, Bill, 22-23 away. Again, this team's been very competitive. I saw a quote from play-by-play man Greg Brown the other day saying that he's been disappointed with the first half of the season. I think the disappointment would only be that they don't have a above 500 record. Other than that, this team, I think, has really done well so far the first half of the season. And the fact that it's July 10th, we're a few days before the All-Star break, and they're only 3 games under 500, and we're still talking about the Pirates and the excitement around them at PNC Park, I think is a win for the organization.
Absolutely. And, hey, they keep playing like they are now, maybe getting a little, improving a little bit. And there will be more Pirates talk later into the season. And like you said, football camp opens in 2 weeks. That's your thing. That's your gimmick, if you will. It has been since we've known each other since we were teenagers. But, hey, Pittsburgh's a great sports town when the teams are doing well. So, Pirates keep playing well. If they're in the thick of things, again, there will be a buzz about them. So.
Well, let's talk about the second half expectations, Bill, for this team coming out of the All-Star break. The trade deadline, of course, is at the end of the month, July 25th, I believe, right around the time Steeler camp starts, by the way. They will have the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And, will the Pirates make a move before that deadline? A lot of buzz around what you just said earlier in the broadcast, that Bob Nutting came out and said we have money to spend, and other people in the front office said, what are you talking about? You told us the opposite. So there's a little bit of a misinformation going on right now within the organization there. But bottom line is, if they can make a move or two and go for it here in the second half of the season, they could potentially contend for one of those wild card spots. And who knows, the division too is still out there. Milwaukee has that big lead in first place, but the Brewers can certainly still be catched.
Oh, absolutely. And, the Brewers have been playing good ball all year, so the fact that the Pirates are kind of within striking distance, I'm not saying, they'll catch them by August 15th, but hey, they play the games for a reason. And, a good month here, or a bad month there, that dictates a lot of things for different teams. Look at last year, how the Pirates started out. If they were fortunate enough to want to run somewhat similar to that right now, they're going to, they'd be up in terms of the wild card for sure. But how much closer would they be to Milwaukee? But at the same time, like we discussed a few minutes ago, a bad month and it's all gone. And I guess the moves that will or will not be made here in the next few weeks will dictate a lot of things, especially with the image and perception of the team, from the fan base.
Absolutely. And if it's business as usual, you'll see them sell. I don't think they're going to be in a selling position, not just 3 games under 500. But will they make any other moves to try to bring in some bigger names here to help them get through the second part of the season? I think with those 3 pitchers, with Jones, Keller, and Skeens, I think they should go for it, bring in a couple more bats, build that, and go for a playoff run here the second half of the season. Why not? When you have 3 awesome pitchers that I don't want to say guarantee you 3 wins, Bill, but for the most part, when they're on the mound, they're going to give you the best chance in that rotation to get you 3 wins every 5 or 6 days.
Absolutely. And how many teams could they face in the wild card that, just if you're looking at the mound opponents, how many of these other teams would you actually on paper say, like, all right, yeah, we're going to go with their 3 against the Pirates 3? Obviously there are other factors involved there, but I feel good about that threesome in a wild card series.
You are watching or listening to the Three Rivers podcast. I'm your host, Ed Troop. Joining me is my good friend, Bill Powerhouse Hughes. And Bill's done a number of things over the years. And Bill, I want to transition a little bit onto probably one of the most exciting things. Anybody that follows you on social media sees, especially this time of the year, we know you're full-time gig is in education, working in the schools during most of the year. But during summertime, when you have a little bit of a break and some time off, you can catch Bill at various baseball venues across the United States. Bill, you've been to all 30 MLB stadiums and some. What are some of the additional stadiums outside of the 30 MLB stadiums that you've been to?
All right, so I've been to 40 total. I went to the Rickwood Field game a couple weeks ago in Birmingham, Alabama. That was my 40th ballpark that I've seen a Major League game in. It's off the top of my head. Three Rivers, the one's no longer in use. Three Rivers, Turner Field in Atlanta, Olympic Stadium in Montreal. The COVID year when they came back in 2021 and the Blue Jays played part of their home games in Dunedin, Florida, in their minor league stadium. They're a Blue Jays affiliate. Went there. Also went to Buffalo to see them at Salem Field for part of the season. And did the original Field of Dreams game in 2021. I've done the MLB Little League Classic up in Williamsport 3 times. I did the Mexico City series last year between the Giants and the Padres. And I feel like I'm forgetting one. I haven't been counting as we're going here, but I've been very blessed. And again, like you said, with me working in education, I'm a school counselor of the Trinity Area School District out in Washington, PA. And having my summers off, it provides me the opportunity to get out and go see these venues. And, and even into the fall, having the weekends off, it allows me to go to college football stadiums as well. But as far as the ballparks and whatnot, it's just I love the environment. I love being there. The smells, the unique smells. Whether you're talking about smelling the grass after it's just cut, or smelling the food. There's just something about being in the ballparks. And but like I said, I've been very blessed. And really, up until 2013, I'd only been to Three Rivers and PNC in Pittsburgh, and out to Cleveland, then Jacobs Field, not Progressive. And quick story, fall of 2012, some friends wanted to get together to watch the WWE pay-per-view, and a little ad ran real quick about how WrestleMania tickets were going to go on sale that year for WrestleMania. It would have been 29 up at MetLife, East Rutherford, New York, New Jersey. And a couple of my friends that we were all watching it together, they're like, hey, let's go up. I was like, well, I don't know. So like, well, look, we've never been in New York. You have. You can be our tour guide. And, credit for me learning New York City goes to an old friend of ours, Eric Lansing, who you've known longer than I have. But he was the first one to get me to New York, to go check it out. But these friends had said, like, well, be our tour guide. We'll do whatever you want. So I was like, well, so I looked to see what sporting events were going on. I looked to see if the Rangers were at home, the Islanders, the Devils, the Knicks, the Nets. I believe it was opening weekend for Major League Baseball, and the Mets happened to be at home. So I said to them, I was like, well, hey, you guys care if we go see a New York Mets game? They're like, you're setting everything up for us. Let's go. So literally went to Citi Field. That was my 4th ballpark, and it just took off from there.
That's very exciting, man. And I've taken I have 2 young boys, 13 and 10, and we've taken them on the road the last 4 or 5 years on some various road trips across the country. We just completed a 17-day, I think it was 18 states trip across the northern Midwest. And we got to go see a game at Wrigley Field in Chicago with the Cubs and the Minnesota Twins in Minnesota at Target Center. Target Field. Target Center is where the basketball team, the NBA team, plays. Target Field's where the Twins play. And man, 2 awesome experiences. We've taken them to Fenway. We've seen a game with the Red Sox there. That's still my all-time favorite is Fenway Park from what I've seen so far. I haven't seen them all like you have, but I even put Fenway above Wrigley. Wrigley was cool. I think the atmosphere outside Wrigley Field is cooler than the atmosphere inside, where Fenway, I think you get both. I think the atmosphere outside, and in my opinion, when you talk about baseball heaven, Fenway Park, to me at least, is baseball heaven. I feel like I'm in a church, a baseball church when I was in Fenway. It was just really super cool. But how about you, Bill? Let's talk about it. What has been your favorite Major League Baseball venue that you've been to?
Geographical bias aside of being a PNC, because I've seen games a couple hundred times there maybe, and it's amazing. So easily I could say PNC is my favorite, hands down. But I'd have to say my 3 favorites that stand above the others, PNC, Oracle out in San Francisco, and Petco in San Diego. And it's one of those things where if it was you and myself and let's say Brian, the 3 of us, and we were all like, all right, we're all going to go to a game at one of the 3. And if you chose one, Brian chose the other, and I got the leftover of the 3, I'm happier than a pig in slop on a rainy day because I love all 3 ballparks.
Yeah, you mentioned San Diego. I saw the Padres play the Pirates actually a long time ago, probably about 10 years, not shortly after that stadium opened out in San Diego. That's an awesome venue as well. It's right in what I think they call the gas lamp district, I think.
Yes.
Where a lot of their restaurants and city living is there within that San Diego area. That's a great venue too. I forgot about Petco Park out there with the Padres. That's a great place. But now, how about the worst? Let's flip the page a little bit. What are your least favorite Major League Baseball venues you've been to?
Whew, my least favorite. I've only been there one time for a game, and I did a private tour there a couple years before that. But I'd gone out to Oakland back in 2018. Now I'm actually going there in a couple weeks for a couple more games, and I know how things have changed out there. With the team getting ready to move, but
That's the
I did.
Coliseum.
Yeah, the Coliseum. Last I think it's called the O.Co now, but when they built in the outfield, the center field, they added the seats to get the Raiders back in town. I think they call it Mount Davis after Al Davis because he said it had to come in. Everybody I talked to that used to that was there for years until recently. They talked about how the environment, the experience was so amazing, and I unfortunately didn't get to experience that. I'm really hoping I could have I enjoy the 2 games coming up here in a couple weeks. Tampa has never done anything for me. I've seen 3 or 4 games down there. It's before I went there, somebody said to me it was like a giant warehouse, and you go inside it. It is what it is. It's okay. I like how they have the Rays on center field, the Stingrays, floating around in the water tank before the game.
Oh,
You go in and feed them and everything.
Yeah.
They tarp off so many sections of the upper deck, and it's just hard to get a baseball vibe there. Maybe if I was there for like a big playoff game, I'd feel differently about it. But those 2 I would say stand out. And I won't say I dislike them, but they're probably my 2 least favorite.
Yeah, you mentioned Tampa Bay too. I know that's all enclosed, of course, in Tampa Bay too. And anytime you have an enclosed baseball facility, it's tough to get that feel. I know we were in Milwaukee during our road trip, and we didn't see a Brewers game at their stadium, but we went and visited and took a look. That looks like a big alien space type thing with the dome on top. How it kind of goes like this, and
Right.
just a really weird, like huge stadium, but a very weird looking venue with that retractable roof that they have in Milwaukee, where the Pirates are currently playing right now.
Yeah, and the thing about Milwaukee that I like, I've seen it with the roof open and closed. So different environments for both, and obviously the weather dictates that. And one of the gentlemen I interviewed for my book, Mr. Hughes Payne, who is from Denora, over an hour away, Ringgold School District, and he was high up with the Brewers, the team president, when a lot of the funding went through to get everything set up to where they're going to build a new ballpark. So I got to interview him maybe back in November, December, and I'm excited to be able to share his view and aspect of that in terms of it getting built.
Well, Bill, let's talk a little bit about the book you're in the process of doing about all of your Major League Baseball venues that you've, I was going to say facilities, venues that you've visited, but you're going to talk more about the stories behind them, right? Everywhere you've been, you've interviewed, you've talked to people in and around the facilities and being a fan and being a part of that environment. Any cool stories you could share with us that come to mind? I know you just mentioned one right there with Denora's own Milwaukee Brewers owner there for a short time, but any other stories, that you wanted to share? I mean, this has been, how long have you worked on this now?
I've been working on this for 4 years.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that when I reached out to a buddy of mine, it was during COVID, because you and Brian had me on the one show, and that's when I broke the news. I was working on the book, and I was like, gung ho, let's get through this. But a couple things, a good friend of mine from college, he had told me, I reached out to him because he had published a book or 2, and I was getting some advice. He's like, look, it's going to take you at least a year of putting in 1 or 2 hours a day. And I said this out of not arrogance, and I wasn't being ignorant when I said it. Now, you know me, I'm neither of those, but I said it out of ignorance of not having experienced something like this yet. I was like, oh, I'll work on 1 ballpark a day and wipe out the 30 in 1 month, and I'm done. Because originally when we first talked about it, when we spoke, I was just doing the book on the current 30 ballparks at that time. Then I was like, well, you got the new one built in Texas, Globe Life Park. And I had been at that point, because of COVID, you couldn't go to any games that year until the World Series. I couldn't go down because of school. So it was like, well, I can't do this book without that ballpark. So I was like, well, okay. I was like, what if I do new ballparks and old ballparks? So that was the change in the book. Then it was like, well, okay, but other people have done that type of book. What can I do differently? I was like, well, I can share some of my personal experiences. And I was like, I don't really have a whole lot. Like the first wild card game in Pittsburgh, the Field of Dreams game. I've had some cool experiences, but I don't have unique stories. So then it became, okay, well, other people have a lot of cool stories. So I've interviewed a lot of people. Very first, I used Facebook, one of the pages on Facebook, just out of curiosity. I just posted, I didn't say I was doing a book. I just posted a question saying something along the lines of, have you been to any major league games that mean a lot to you, whether they were historical or, personal reasons? And within 5 minutes, a guy replied back, Leon DeHaven from Phoenix, Arizona. And he didn't put any words. He just put the number 715. He was in Atlanta when Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's home run record.
Wow.
And the fact that he responded to that within 5 minutes, I was like, boom, there I go. Other people have had experiences. I interviewed, do you remember Dick Stockton, the legendary sports announcer?
Absolutely, of course.
Mr. Stockton, I reached out to, I was connected with him. Credit goes to Mr. Ernie Accorsi, former NFL general manager. Mr. Accorsi I interviewed for the book, and then he goes, Dick Stockton is my best friend. I can connect you guys. Okay. So connected us, and I talked to him, and he was at the World Series game in 1954 when Willie Mays made that catch over his shoulder. And then Mr. Stockton did the 75 World Series, and he called the Carlton Fisk home run when the ball went off the foul pole. And again, how everybody has a different perspective. There's all these different angles of different things. When was it? This was probably maybe about February, maybe like 5-6 months ago. I interviewed Marty Brennaman, Hall of Fame announcer from the Cincinnati Reds. He's retired now. Yep. Mr. Brennaman was also working the 75 World Series because it was Reds versus Red Sox. And his perspective of that game was he didn't see the home run because he was with the Reds broadcast. He was sent down to the locker room at Fenway Park. Everything was tarped off. They had all the wine, the champagne, and everything ready for them to celebrate. So it was one of those little tiny TVs, when we were little kids, those little black and whites. That's what they had set up. So he saw the home run on that little TV while Dick Stockton was calling it. So talking to two Hall of Fame announcers about the same play, having different perspectives, that's just like, I love it. I love it. And I've spoken to so many people that have shared unique stories. Couples going on their first date that are now married, taking their kids to games. I mean, you name it. I've been fortunate enough to interview a lot of people.
It is America's favorite pastime, right? Everybody says football is past, baseball by, but I always joke with people. I always say, baseball was my first love. I married football, but baseball was my first love, right?
Sure.
The very first girlfriend you had that you always still think about, huh? Baseball is great. And unfortunately, I think here in Pittsburgh, for the generation behind us, and really, Bill, you were, I'm not dating you or me, but I know you're a few years older than me. So you would have been alive during the last Pirates World Series championship in '79. Very little, but you were still alive. I was not. I was born in '80. So I've never seen the Pirates in a World Series. They had those 3 winning years in the early '90s. And then, of course, the 3 playoff years back in 13, 14, and 15 here most recently, about 10 years ago. But outside of that, if you weren't around for either of those 2 periods, you have not seen winning baseball here in Pittsburgh. And even my 2 sons who are 13 and 10, it's tough to rally around them and get them into the Pirates. They like the Pirates by default because they're from Pittsburgh, and they like the Steelers, and they like the Pens and Pitt and Penn State and everything else. But it's hard to keep them interested in the Pirates, but they are interested in baseball. We go to these other venues. Man, you're exactly right. It just brings you right back to your childhood. That's what baseball does to you.
Absolutely. And while I was alive for that '79 World Series, I have no recollection of it. My earliest memory that I can pinpoint, like my dad had taken me to some games leading up to the story I'm about to share with you, but you don't know what I'm talking about. My dad, he would always take me down to games, and we would go down Route 51 to Liberty Tubes and then cross the Liberty Bridge. So growing up in Menneson, eventually transferring to Bell Vernon, but I still followed Bell Vernon because that's where my grandfather lived and my uncles played. Their colors were yellow and white, but there was always green in the uniforms. So I kind of, when I was real little, started following the Oakland A's. So, and then you'll know as soon as I start talking about this, you'll appreciate this. One day we're going through the Liberty Tubes, the tunnels, and crossing the Liberty Bridge, and you look up and there's the exit that says Oakland. So I'm like, again, I'm probably 6 years old, 5, 6, maybe 7. I'm like, Dad, can we go to an Oakland A's game? And he's driving. He's like, what? I was like, the sign, Oakland. And then he explained to me how that's the Oakland section of Pittsburgh. Oakland A's, they're in California. And that's how I opened my book, is that story. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's awesome. And the A's were exciting to watch back in the late 80s and early 90s with Dennis Eckersley and Mark McGuire, of course, there, Jose Canseco. I mean, that was a exciting time to watch the A's back in the day. It's funny you mentioned that when you were a child, because I remember Pittsburgh not having an NBA team. And I love basketball. I still love basketball to this day. So when I was a kid, I was like, well, I'll just follow the New York Knicks because they're the closest NBA team to Pittsburgh out of New York. So I became a Knicks fan. I'm still a Knicks fan to this day. I guess I forgot about Cleveland and even Philadelphia, even Washington being closer than New York. But it's the only New York team I root for still to this day, the New York Knicks. But that is a funny story with the Oakland A's. But they had some good baseball teams back in the day. Hey, Bill, I have a few more minutes with you. I do want to wrap it up here in a little bit. Outside of your work and education, right in this book, you've also covered high school sports for a number of years for some local news outlets and some local papers. Talk a little bit about over the years, and I'm guessing you're probably over 25 years now. I know I am, so you have to be there right with me, covering WPIL football, basketball. Who is the greatest? And I know I keep asking all these, who are the greatest to you and putting you on the spot, but always like to get this perspective. You've seen a lot of good athletes here in Western Pennsylvania over the years. Who's your favorite?
My favorite to cover, or the best that I cover?
Let's do both. Let's give us both if they're different.
Ooh. Wow. Favorite. It might be favorite and best might be the same answer. And that would be Sherelle Allen from Menneson, girls basketball player. Went to Notre Dame, went to the WNBA, Sacramento Monarchs, and she had a nice long career overseas. She's retired and now assistant coach at Notre Dame. She was so silky smooth. And a few people have said to me over the years that when she played in Class A, the competition wasn't that good. I covered her against bigger schools. They went to the year, Sherelle's senior year, they lost 2 games. It was a tournament, I think, in Ohio was the opener, and they lost a non-section game at Bethel Park, who at the time, Whitfield had 4 classes. Bethel Park was 4A, Quad A. And the game came down to the end. Bethel Park won, I want to say it was by 5 points, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And Sherelle had like 32 or 34 points the last 20-some of the game for Menneson, and she wasn't a ball hog. I covered her one time. She had a quadruple double.
Wow.
She's the furthest thing from a ball hog. I interviewed the Bethel Park coach after that game, and her name is slipping my mind. She's coaching somewhere else. She was the one suspended for a year, and then she's fighting it. Shame on me for forgetting her name. Excellent coach.
Coach from Shady Side Academy?
I think that's where she ended up. Yeah. But after the game, I'm interviewing her, and she flat out, and I didn't feed her this question to answer it this way. You know how sometimes reporters can do that to get an answer they want.
Right.
I was like, talk a little about the game and Sherelle Allen. And she, without hesitation, she goes, she could play AAA boys and average 10 to 15 points a game.
Wow.
Without hesitation. She's like, she could play against the boys right now. So Sherelle's the first one that stands out. She had a rivalry with Clareton's Campbell Gissendanner. So Cam went to, I believe it was it NC State, I think. But football, and I don't want to use a recency bias here, but Quentin Martin, Belvarden,
right?
Just so talented, so talented.
Well, it helps that he's going to Penn State too, and we do know that you're a Penn State guy too, right? You go to a couple games at Happy Valley each season.
Yeah, I do. I go to every game in Happy Valley. But
yeah, exactly. I'm messing with you, my man.
No. I know. He
is. I mean, Quentin Martin just, early on in his high school career too, when you saw him play as a freshman, you knew he was going to be special. He continued to do that. And one of the many reasons. Belle Vernon had a very talented. We had Matt Humbert on our program a few weeks ago. We talked to Matt about Quentin and about the program, what it's done the last few years. But he's a big reason why they won back-to-back state titles the last 2 years. A lot of important pieces in place, but Quentin Martin was definitely leading that charge. And from what I don't know him personally, but from what I heard he's a great kid off the field as well.
He is, and and this will make me sound even more biased than saying Quentin. And then who knows what the future holds for him. I wish him the best. Most importantly, hopefully he gets that degree. And then all student athletes, get those degrees. But I coached his dad at Monessen. I was assistant coach on the Monessen staff when Quentin Sr. played there. And Quentin Jr., known as Q, he's a combination of his dad, because he's lightning quick. He's a little taller than his dad, a couple inches. But he's a combination of his dad and his Uncle Sean. And it's just like, the first time I covered Quentin was his freshman year. It was a playoff game at home. I want to say they played, I don't know if it was Chartiers Valley, Central Valley, I'm not sure. But I had heard all the hype since he was in like 7th grade. And you know how it is. You hear about somebody. Then, the level set so high. And it's like, no, they don't live up to it. And I was like, watching him play, I was like, man, this kid's a freshman. That's pretty impressive. I'm trying to think some of the other, because I'm only giving Mon Valley names, because again, Mon Valley, that's where I've done most of my writing,
right?
As far as solid players, but I mean, those are the ones that jump out to me right away. I mean, there are a lot of good athletes I've been fortunate enough to cover.
How are your Nittany Lions going to be this year, man? How's Penn State going to do this year?
Probably, you could say 10-2 every year, and it's going to be close. Realistically, I think the ceiling is 11-1, the floor 9-3. It's below that, you're going to start hearing the fan base. But I would think they'll do well enough to get into the playoff. But again, you never know.
Well, being a Pitt fan, growing up a Pitt fan, I can tell you that you can't say 10-2 every year when you're a Pitt fan. That's the expectation. You're hoping for 5 or 6 wins, right? Of course, Pitt faithful down in Oakland will tell you otherwise. But I'd like them just to be a top 25 team first, and then worry about the next step after that. How about that? So we'll leave it right there. Hey, Bill, I appreciate you coming on the podcast this week and talking to us. Always a pleasure, my good friend. We didn't even talk about any wrestling. We're always, you're big on wrestling, and maybe we do have a few more minutes. Maybe hit me with some wrestling, or wrestling story, or something good here to end with.
Oh man, well, the main story, I see you have our pictures there with saying One Berg and. Three Rivers Podcast with Ed Troop, and you have my name up above, the Bill Powerhouse Hughes. I mean, you're the one that created the name Powerhouse. So, that's the most important story I can share right now.
Absolutely. I gave you your wrestling nickname, your stage name that you rolled with back in the day. And You'll always be Powerhouse to me, man. And you're a powerhouse here on the program. Let's get you back on this fall to talk some Penn State football and some local high school football, too, as you get out there and start covering more of the WPIAL here in the next 4 or 5 months, along with myself as well. I can't believe football season is right around the corner. But thanks for coming on, Bill. We appreciate it. Good luck with the book.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Anytime, more than happy. Best of luck to you guys.
How much longer for the book we're thinking? Next year or two? Or
oh gosh, it better. Well, I'm working summer school right now. We're done next Thursday, so then it's time to dig in. I'm hoping, and I really want to have this thing done this fall, so I've spoken to some publishers about it. They want to see it 80% done. But again, the problem is that I keep talking to people who have unique stories, or I'll see a post on social media about this and that. I was like, oh, I'd like to talk to that guy. I want to hear more about this story. That'd be a good addition to the book. So really, I just need to set a hard deadline date and be like, that's it. Boom, let's go.
Well, when the book's done, you're going to come back here on the program and let's promote it. Let's talk about it and let's dive into it. And then I want you to sign a copy for me as well. Is that a deal?
Absolutely. One for you and one for Brian. You guys got it. Definitely.
Brian doesn't need any freebies. He gets enough freebies. He doesn't send freebies my way. And here I am on a Wednesday night doing his thing, and he's at dinner. How about that? So, but hey, Bill, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Have a great night. And we are just 14 days away from Steeler camp starting. We're going to have another show next Wednesday. and then we're going to have a week off. And then when we come back on the 31st, Brian and I are going to be broadcasting live from Latrobe from St. Vincent College for our weekly podcast at Steeler Camp as we kick off the 2024 training camp for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Going to be an exciting run as we get into the season with our pregame and postgame coverage this upcoming fall on Steeler game days. That's right. Brian and I will be on before and after each Steeler game to preview and wrap up the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming fall right here on Oneberg. That's going to do it for our podcast for this week. We will be on next Wednesday. Make sure you log right back on here to Oneberg. That's Bill Hughes. I'm Ed Troop. We'll see you next week right here